Welcome to another episode of Band Director Boot Camp, the podcast with productivity and wellness tips for busy band directors. I'm your host, Lesley Moffat, and I'm really grateful to be sharing this platform with you. As busy band directors, we know you don't have lots of time to watch lengthy professional development webinars, so we share 20-minute tidbits with takeaways you can use to support you in this awesome profession in a healthy way. And I'm really excited to have a guest today with us. I've seen him as an adjudicator and clinician in the Pacific Northwest, and I've seen him in action and his students in action as a guest when he's hosted band festivals and his students run the things. It's flawless and absolutely wonderful. And so he's here to share some of his tips and tricks and all kinds of things that he has found that have been helpful to him in protecting his own wellness and sanity and building wonderful program and a community with his students that's remarkable. So I'm going to shut up now, and I'd like to bring on board and welcome and ask him to introduce himself. Edwin Powell he's a director of bands, professor of music at Pacific Lutheran University. Edwin, thank you for making time for us today.
Thank you, Lesley. It's nice to be on. Appreciate it a lot.
Yeah. Let's tell our listeners a little bit about maybe why you became a teacher and what you do here so they can just get a little bit of background.
Well, I became a teacher because I was quite honestly searching for something that was going to be meaningful. And my father was a high school history teacher, and I just thought that he had a great kind of work-life balance. He had a great schedule, and he seemed to really be passionate about his topic. So I thought, you know what, I've been playing this trumpet for a long time, and maybe that's what I want to do. Maybe I want to be a band director. Little did I know that being a band director was a lot different than being a public school history teacher.
A little. Yeah. Just a little. So what kind of tip are you coming here with? I know you'll have several, but what's kind of the gist so folks know why they want to stay tuned?
Well, knowing that this is more of a wellness podcast, and how do you keep your own sanity through this insane process that we do? It's mainly about building culture around yourself that will help you in all the other things that aren't really told to you in, say, a classroom when you're learning how to become a band director. So for example, if your expertise is in teaching music, and so you know all the pedagogies of all these instruments, and you know how to run an efficient rehearsal, and you know how to efficiently study a score, but you also have a million things to do that are logistical, such as all the paperwork, such as purchase orders, such as how do you set up a room, and how do you do all of these things, and then, by the way, break the room down. How do you do instrument maintenance? How do you do all this other stuff that nobody really talks about, yet will suck away all of your time if you do not build a system in place that takes care of those things. And what you do is then oversee it as opposed to doing it yourself. And we're such a do-it-ourself kind of culture that it becomes very hard for some people to realize that you have to rely on other people with a lot of trust to get things done. And I think, Lesley, you mentioned that you see those things when you've come to our campus for for an event of some kind, and you see that I have an army of students running around taking care of things, and they're amazing at it. That way, I don't have to think about it. So
and the pride and ownership, and they love it too. So they've clearly taken the ownership.
Absolutely, and look, they're becoming music teachers themselves. So this is something that they at least have to have a very strong understanding of how to organize. And so, my role has just been to organize the process as opposed to do it. And so, therefore, I set people in place, I choose the right leaders, and I make sure that the team is ready to go. They understand their job, and they take, as you said, a great deal of pride into doing these things. And that's it.
I see a lot of parallels between, like you just said, getting the right people in the right roles and teaching them what that looks like and all of those things. That's just like leading a band, right? Everybody's got a different role and blah, blah, blah. You want to help make sure that, the trumpet player is somebody that can get us out. I mean, yeah, so many similarities. So this is like taking what you're doing on the podium and doing it because we're managing all that on a podium. Yeah, you had some other examples that you had given too. Off the top of your head, can you give a couple more examples or expand on some other ways you've used students or had them help do some more things?
Well, I mean, I always have a team of students. One is forming the volunteers that for the things that you see that are outward. So developing the team, but I always have somebody that's in charge of logistics. And so the logistics are things like, how does the room get set up? How does the room get torn down after that? Who's responsible for doing those things? And each one of them sometimes comes at it a little bit different way, but they're in charge of those things. I also have a librarian. And the librarian is gold. Having somebody who will account for every piece of music that's passed out and will also make sure it gets returned. So how do we do that? And how do we do that in an efficient way? Well, there's numbering systems, there's barcode systems and things like that. But I always turn to my librarian and say, is everything in? And the answer is either yes or no. And if the answer is no, then we follow up and find out why. But to have to do all of that sorting yourself and have to do all of those other things, that's a nightmare. Fundraising. Here's another one. What about
the F word?
Right. I mean, how do you fundraise? And if I could tell a story very young in my career, we had a terrifically successful fundraiser that is no longer legal, unfortunately, but it was a raffle. And we found an old 67 Mustang. And it barely ran, and I had a team of parents who were handy get this car running, and also give it a very simple but beautiful new coat of paint, and got this Mustang, a classic car, running so that we could raffle it off. We raffled it off for $2 a ticket, and we sold at least $25,000 worth of tickets. And in the accounting, people would bring in money, and and I would stash it in a box, and all of this, and then I would count it up at the end of the week, and at one point, it looked like we were about $600 off, and there was $600 less than what I thought was there. Well, what we ended up finding out was that the secretary of the band parents organization came in and took some money away, didn't account for it. Well, okay, so that made me panic, and I completely restructured my money-taking system at that point. Obviously, there are multiple reasons why a band director might get into hot water with their administration. Money is probably the number one thing. And so I structured I don't touch money anymore. And I just said to the band parents, I said, we have to come up with a system where I don't touch it. I'm supposed to be teaching music. I am not an accountant, and I'm not going to do that. And so by setting up a structure, I never had to do it again. And it was awesome.
Yes. So, okay, I'm a recovering control freak. Aren't all of us band directors control freaks? So let's be real with these people that are listening today, because it all sounds good, but they want it done just so. How did you let go? How did you do that?
I won't say I'm very good at that. I let go because I learned to trust the people that I chose for those roles. And if you can oversee and you can ask a question, how's this going and how's this happening? And if they're taking care of it a little bit differently than you, then make sure that if they are not taking care of it properly, in that it won't be accounted for properly, whether that be money or whether that be logistics or something else, then you can question that. However, I learned that there's a lot of smart people that do things differently than I do that do it really well. And the trust is the hard part.
It's kind of like jazz improv, right? You've got a structure, and you might say to them, this is the structure. Here's at the end of the day what your goal is with the finances or whatever. Now you figure how to do it in a legal way and in a way that meets all the requirements, just like you want to stay in the chord structure, but maybe you do a little other stuff. So yeah. So
yeah. And once money was a big one, but once I didn't have to worry about money anymore. That was one big stress level away from me. And I could focus on how am I going to teach Incantation and Dance by John Barnes Chance to my band, as opposed to, oh my God, I've got several $100s in a strongbox in my desk. It's all that stuff is very distracting. And if you can focus on the things that you are particularly highly trained at, and if you finish a degree in music education, you are highly trained in the pedagogy of these instruments and how to put together a band and how to do these things and how to get them all to play together. There's a lot of other people that are highly trained in other things or very good at other things. And you don't need to be doing those things. You get a team around you that is going to help you, because this is a community. And that community has to have roles. And there are a lot of people that will very happily check out all the uniforms for you, and very happily take all the measurements, and very happily do all these things. And then, oh yeah, by the way, we need to order reads. So, okay, somebody will help you do that if you have the right structure in place.
Yeah. And like you said, they will happily do it. People want to help and contribute.
Yes.
And if I learned this the hard way, I would say, oh, I need band parents to get involved. But that could be overwhelming. Like, well, what if I show up at a meeting? Am I going to be chairman of some, And so then I learned that to put out there, here's what I'll need, data entry that can be done from a home computer. I put all kinds of things out there so people could find where they fit in.
Right.
And so I imagine that you must do something like that, talking about the jobs that need to be done and people that show interest. I mean, it's probably a well-oiled machine by now, I'm guessing. Welcome, Band Director Bootcamp listeners. If you're feeling a bit burnt out and are ready for support and accountability partners in your wellness and productivity, we have an amazing opportunity for you. Join our 90-day virtual bootcamp, a community initiative designed for busy band directors like you who love their job but seek a more sustainable approach. We'll meet weekly, discuss your wellness goals, and develop strategies to help you achieve them. We'll tackle productivity hacks and fine-tune systems for the upcoming school year. With 35 years of experience, I've got some tricks and tips up my sleeve that I can't wait to share. So, as we move into a new season of our lives, if you want to feel empowered and supported by like-minded individuals, this is your chance. Reach out to me at banddirectorbootcamp.com or click on the link in our show notes to schedule a 15-minute call. Let's ensure this is the right fit for you, get you signed up, and embark on this wellness journey together. Because together, we rise.
It is. There's a structure in place, and I put together that structure. But how you get to it's like a roadmap. There's multiple avenues, right? And so somebody might take a slightly different path to get to the final destination. That's fine. It is just learning to trust. And so when it comes to my student team, when we're getting ready for an event of some kind, I simply have meetings and ask questions. How's this going? How's that going? What's your plan for this? What's your plan for that? And so honestly, I can then take it away and I do not have to think about it, because this is them. They want to do it and they want to do it well. And it's really great when you get that level of investment. It's really difficult at times to make sure that happens. You have to ask the right people for the right roles, and sometimes you have to not be afraid to replace them either.
Yeah. Oh, we've all had. Well, those of us that have done this a while have been in that awkward situation. Yeah. And I know that there's probably not anybody out there that doubts that what you're saying is true. And then they go, oh, it's overwhelming to think about what do I do? Do I have them do uniforms now? Because Edwin said uniforms. And we talked before this, instead of being overwhelmed with all the things you could do, this would be a really good time to think about and notice, if you're still in school or whatever, what are the things or what were the things this past year that just sucked your energy so you didn't have it for the actual teaching and things you wanted. Instead of deciding you have to have a uniform manager now, think about what you need so that you can think about what to implement first. What's the first thing and second thing, instead of doing it all at once? Because I'm sure you didn't just poof, have it all happen.
There's something really important though as well. Yeah. You have to lead by example, and they have to see that you are putting the work into the things that you said, this is what I'm really good at and what I'm going to do for you. And here's what I need help with. They have to see that you're putting that work in and that you're using the time that whoever your team is helping you put that work into that goal. So in other words, we want our music teacher to focus on teaching music. And so that has to do with learning music, and that has to do with teaching techniques. They have to actually see that you're doing that work. If they think that you're taking all this extra time that you have and then you're going sitting in your lounge chair at home, then that's not going to be very successful, because you're not leading by example.
Right. And that's how you build trust, when
Correct.
They can see that. Yeah. My gosh. Well, we've got just a minute or two left here. And I know, because you work so closely with new or our future music educators, you've probably got more than just one tip. So at the end here, if you talked about adaptability and you gave some great examples to me earlier. So if you want to leave us with a nugget or two for especially our newer teachers, so that they can, if they want to teach as long as you and I have been doing it, give them a little pointers here.
Well, the first thing is you have to do something that is for you, just for yourself. Our jobs can be completely consuming. For me, it was I made a commitment to go to the gym and get some good exercise in, and that I decided that I was doing for myself only. And I think that's super important. What is it that really makes you happy? And that could be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be exercise. So find that. And the other thing is realize that today's students are no longer, they're no longer, leadership from the top down does not work anymore. And so you can't just tell a student to do something and expect that they'll do it. Some will do it, but others will not. So what you have to do is you have to have and figure out group buy-in. So what is it that your message, if I tell Lesley, you need to go practice for 2 hours in order to get this better, how much are you really going to do that unless you want to do that? All right. So it's more a matter of what it is the students will buy into. And so what are these group goals that you can have? And so my favorite thing is the idea of somewhat tricking them into being motivated. How do you motivate somebody that doesn't want to be motivated? Well, you can't. They have to want to be motivated. Well, how do you teach them how to be motivated? You trick them into it. And usually it's their peers. If all together you come up with a group goal, people are going to want to be a part of that community more. And so if they see their peers doing it and they see that you're leading it, they'll want to do it. And they don't want to let their friends down. And so if the expectation is that the trumpets are going to put in a sectional every week on Friday afternoons, so-and-so shouldn't just go off and do something else because they don't feel like it today. It's an idea of creating a culture where this is how we work and this is what's going to get us to the achievement that we want. And that achievement's fun. So to me, if I was if I was trying a young teacher today, I think learning to be very adaptable in a very quickly changing landscape, knowing that try something new, and if it doesn't work, try something different. And look at the things that do work and begin to put that into the bag. And then build that, from there. And this is all about, it's about the education of students, and it's about the idea of using music in order to create better human beings. And by doing that, we have to have their cooperation. Learning is not a one-way street where we just pour our knowledge into these people and then they have it. They have to be active participants. And how do we get them to do that? How do we convince them that this is worth it? Well, that's changing. And we have to change with it. Otherwise, we're going to be pretty frustrated. And all of our anxious, control freaky stuff is going to start coming up again. And we just have to, if it's not working, do something different.
Yep, and that will be good advice for your entire career, because what works this year might not work in a couple of years. So that's a constant state of flow and noticing, and the whole thing comes about observing and being aware of what I'm doing and what's happening as a result of that. So I just really want to thank you, Edwin Powell, for joining us today on this edition of Band Director Boot Camp. And I want to thank all you listeners who are making a difference in kids' lives through the magic of music education every single day. The work you do matters, and so do you. Join us next time on Band Director Boot Camp for another episode of productivity and wellness tips to make your life a little easier.